Quickly, the report says that Osama bin Laden has met.
We had a recording come out of the Obama headquarters. Not Obama, I'm sorry. Bin Laden.
I know what you mean.
Bin Laden.
It was October 30th.
It came out of Bin Laden's headquarters over there in Pakistan or whatever.
Michael, first off, is Bin Laden, is Osama, is Barack Obama
a decade of lies, manipulations being brought into the fore, even though he's not an appropriate president, and that's exactly what we find out actually happened. We find out he was funded by none other than Saudi Arabia. We find out that he's lied about every single college he's gone to. We find out that his career at Chicago was a big fat lie. And then we find out that it turns out everybody he was put up against in a political race was set up to fail. And so he lied about every single college he's been to. Somehow he's a Harvard law professor when he doesn't even have a law degree. And the entire time he's never legally changed his name from Barry Soetoro. And then the Saudi Prince Al-Waleed pays for him to go to Harvard. A Saudi prince who would later donate $10 million to New York to rebuild after 9/11. So the Saudi prince, after he pays for Obama's college education at Harvard, then donates $20 million to Harvard as well.
They still continue to fund him and train him, and they're now using him to help bring about world government by making him the big boogeyman, because they can't use Saddam Hussein anymore. Did you ever hear of Osama bin Laden before you heard of Saddam Hussein? When did you start hearing of Osama bin Laden? It was after Saddam Hussein and Iraq were supposedly neutralized in the Gulf War.
His graduating class, his alleged graduating class, was extremely small, and the Columbia professor, here's the article, doesn't remember Barack Obama attending Columbia at all. Alan Root, who was technically a former classmate of Obama's at Columbia, yet he and none of the other professors seem to remember him. I was put on Professor Graff's trail by another Columbia classmate skeptical about Obama's story. He told me that Professor Graff had been the speaker of the class of 53 last weekend at Columbia. My friend was watching Graff answer questions for the crowd when he was asked about Obama at Columbia. Graff said, "I have my doubts he even went there." Columbia had a very small graduating class. It was something, I can't remember, it was less than 1,000 people, I think. And most of these people knew each other. It's a pretty exclusive school. And nobody seems to remember Barack Obama there. So we have this guy, and if you've looked into his birth certificate, his certificate of live birth, it's totally fake. I did a pretty good expose on that. You look at the security cross-hatching on the certificate towards the left hand of the page, where the page bends, where the scan of the page supposedly bends, and the cross-hatching is completely completely parallel. It doesn't bend with the rest of the page, and then the border extends well beyond the document. The whole point of security cross-hatching is to make sure you're scanning an original document. You don't just throw in security cross-hatching after the fact on a birth certificate. So there's a lot of funny things going around Obama. He kind of just appears out of nowhere with this interesting backstory. He's had a name change. He happens to look almost exactly like Osama bin Laden, with the addition of some whiskers, maybe a little bit of coloring around his eyebrows to make them look rounder, and a little extra fake temple hair painted in. You add the little cap on, make sure he doesn't show his teeth too much, kind of gives a lip over his teeth, and it looks exactly like the same person. So more on Barry Soetoro's background. Tom Moyes remembers the first time he heard the name Barack Obama. It was in the fall of 2004 after the electrifying speech Obama delivered at the 2004 Democratic Convention. That was the oration, of course, which introduced the young would-be Illinois senator, blah, blah, blah. So I picked up this newspaper, says Moyes, and it's this huge article about this guy, Barack Obama, and it says he had gone to Occidental at the same time I was there. And I said to myself, there's no way. I never heard of the name Barack. I'm thinking it must be a mistake. Moving on to Columbia. Obama's college records are all sealed, for the record, which is one of the only people that's ever happened with. Why keep the college records of a 51-year-old president of the United States secret? This is by Wayne Allen Root, who attended Columbia. If anyone should have questions about Obama's record at Columbia University, it's me. We both graduated, according to Obama, Columbia University class of '83. We are both, according to Obama, pre-law and political science majors, and I thought I knew most everyone at Columbia. I certainly thought I had heard of all the fellow political science majors, but not Obama. Or as he was known then, Barry Soetoro. I never met him, never saw him, never even heard of him, and none of the classmates I knew at Columbia ever said they met him, saw him, or heard of him. But don't take my word for it. The Wall Street Journal reported in 2008 that Fox News randomly called 400 of our Columbia classmates and never found one who ever met Obama. The first question to ask is, if you had great grades, why would you seal your records? So let's assume Obama got poor grades. Why not release the records? He's president of the free world, for gosh sakes. He's the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. Who'd care about some poor grades from 3 decades ago, right? So, what's the problem? Doesn't that make the media suspicious? Something doesn't add up. Secondly, if he had poor grades at Occidental, how did he get admitted to an Ivy League university in the first place? And if his grades at Columbia were awful, how'd he ever get into Harvard Law School? So again, those grades must have been great, right? So why spend millions of dollars keeping them sealed? So then, okay, of course we know how he got into Harvard. He was paid by the Saudi Prince Al-Walid, who later donated $20 million. Okay, so then we are always told that he was a constitutional law scholar at the University of Chicago. And that's how he kind of got his way into the Senate. But that turns out to be a lie as well. Obama did not hold the title of a law school professor at the University of Chicago. Okay, he served as a professor at the law school. He was a lecturer, actually, and taught courses there part-time, and he never held the position of professor. Okay, so he was a lecturer at the University of Chicago between 1992 and 1996. And this is the same time he was working at the law firm. He later lost his law license because he kept lying about everything, and he had to give it up, just like his wife did. In his first years of teaching, he only had one course. Okay. Oh, boy. Here's from the New York Times. It was unusual. What is unusual is the University of Chicago's promotion of Senator Obama to the position of senior lecturer. As the law school correctly points out on its website, that title is used for long-established legal scholars such as Richard Posner and Frank Easterbrook. Barack Obama never achieved such a scholarly stature. Indeed, it does not appear that he engaged in legal scholarship at all. And to my knowledge, the title of senior lecturer has never been applied to someone who was basically an adjunct professor. Even more unusual is Chicago's claim that Barack Obama was offered a fully tenured position. The University of Chicago is one of the most elite law schools in the country, and it would be extremely rare for a law school to offer a tenure-track position to someone without any legal scholarship, much less one with tenure. And this one is the bombshell. This is Doug Ross reporting. I spent some time with the highest tenured faculty members at Chicago Law a few months back, and he did not have many nice things to say about Barry. Obama applied for a position as an adjunct and wasn't even considered. A few weeks later, the law school got a phone call from the Board of Trustees telling them to find him an office, put him on the payroll, and give him a class to teach. The board told him he didn't have to be a member of the faculty, but they needed to give him a temporary position. He was never a professor and was hardly an adjunct. The other professors hated him because he was lazy, unqualified, never attended any of the faculty meetings, and it was clear that the position was nothing more than a political stepping stool. According to my professor friend, he had the lowest intellectual capacity in the building. He also doubted whether he was legitimately an editor on the Harvard Law Review, because if he was, he would be the first and only editor of an Ivy League law review to ever be published while in school. To never be published while in school. Publication is or was a requirement. So he never even published anything. Did he even go to these schools? Of course, there's only one picture of Obama actually lecturing at the University of Chicago, only one piece of proof, and this picture was released in 2008. In the picture, Obama has a heading that reads Power and Analysis, and the subheading reads Relationships Built on Self-Interest, and the symbol in between corporation and mayor is the dollar sign. This is a Saul Alinsky schematic, the idea of power analysis, which is a relationship built on self-interest between corporations, banks, and utilities. Okay, so there's this one piece of proof that he was teaching there. He's never really attending. He doesn't go to any of the faculty meetings ever. Okay. People are surprised how he got in. He was, the board of trustees told him to give him a job. New York Times. Other faculty members dreamed of tenured positions. He turned them down. That's actually not true. It was never offered. While most colleagues published by the pound, Obama never completed a single work of legal scholarship. As we know, President Obama was a former editor for Harvard Law Review and had to surrender his law license back in 2008 in order to escape charges he lied on his bar application. A voluntary surrender is not something where you decide, gee, a license is not really something I need anymore, is it? And forget to renew your license. Voluntary surrender is something you do when you've been accused of something and you have to voluntarily surrender your license. His wife also had to voluntarily surrender her license after a federal judge gave her the choice between surrendering her license or standing trial for insurance fraud. So he's lying about every single thing. And this is where it gets really fun, because this is where he starts to run for senator in Senate in Illinois. And this is where the path becomes even more obviously paved for him than it was building up to this with his prestigious schools that he has his records sealed in and he won't let out. Okay, so this is where we really see that he is being groomed to become president. When Obama first ran for Senate in Illinois, the Democratic primary, he ran against a very wealthy stock trader, Blair Hull. Hull was unskilled as a politician. In early media reports leading up to the March 16, 2004 primary election, Hull enjoyed a substantial lead and widespread name recognition resulting from a well-financed advertisement effort. Hull was well ahead in the polls when his sealed divorce papers were leaked to the press. During the divorce, his then-wife accused him of hitting her. Okay, so Hull is this little guy, and he never, who knows what happened there. His wife looks bigger than he does. But the press used this beating story, and Hull plummeted out of the polls, and Obama won the Democratic primary by a huge margin. Then, his next candidate, the next person he goes up against, is Jack Ryan. You may remember Jack Ryan. He's the one-time Goldman Sachs partner. It appeared that Obama had no chance against Ryan, just like Hull, but then Ryan's divorce records and child custody files were released, and then his wife, actress Jeri Ryan, who you may remember as a Borg on 7 of 9 in Star Trek Voyager, alleged that Jack Ryan had asked her to perform sexual acts with him in public in sex clubs in New York, New Orleans, and Paris. Jeri Ryan described one as a bizarre club with cages, whips, and other apparatus for hanging from the ceiling. Days after the release, Ryan withdrew from the race. In his place, the Republican Party placed the ineffective Alan Keyes, and Obama coasted into the Senate seat, receiving 73% of the votes. So the first guy he goes up against, suddenly there's accusations of him beating his wife. The second guy he goes up against, suddenly his wife says that she's making him do kinky sexual things she's uncomfortable with, totally destroying both of them and projecting and pushing Obama into the fore. It doesn't seem like this Jerry Ryan would have much trouble with cages, whips, and other apparatus hanging from the ceiling, but right when her husband is trying to get elected, suddenly she does. Okay, so he gets wafted upwards by the establishment through the most expensive schools that he doesn't seem to be able to get into. He's paid for by the Saudi prince, and then he's given a job at Chicago, even though he's not qualified. And then all these accusations against his the people he's running against come up, and then he's put up against Alan Keyes, who was basically set up to fail. It's just the whole thing. You can tell he was just being groomed the entire time. Ryan dropped out and Alan Keyes moved from Maryland to run against Barry Soetoro. The election got all kinds of press because there was no blacks in the U.S. Senate, and one of these black men was going to be senator. Alan Keyes did his best to warn everyone Barry was not who he claimed to be, but the public saw him as a carpetbagger.
Obama is a radical communist, and I think it's becoming clear. That's what I told people in Illinois, and now everybody realizes it's true. He's going to destroy this country, and we're either going to stop him, or the United States of America is going to cease to exist.
So what does tonight mean when President Obama is President of the United States? How does tonight play a role?
That's another question. Is he President of the United States? According to the Constitution, in order to be eligible for president, you have to be a natural-born citizen. He has refused to provide proof that he is, in fact, a natural-born citizen, and his Kenyan relations say that he was born in Nairobi at a time when his mother was too young to transmit U.S. citizenship. So I'm not even sure he's President of the United States. No, that's not a laughing matter. Neither are many of our military people now who are going to court to ask the question, do we have to obey a man who is not qualified under the Constitution? We're in the midst of the greatest crisis this nation has ever seen. And if we don't stop laughing about it and deal with it, we're going to find ourselves in the midst of chaos, confusion, and civil war. It's time we started acting like grown-ups.
They were caught before staging these videos. One time they were using a fat man who was right-handed and had a ring on his finger, which is proof that he's not Osama bin Laden. So if they've done it in the past, that increases the likelihood that they're going to do it in the future. I don't think it's just some random occurrence, and I think it's a little too much of a coincidence, quote unquote, that Osama Obama, who happens to have the middle name Hussein, who was another person in the Middle East taken out, becomes president, and he's had a name change, and he's lying about being so not privileged when he was younger, when in fact he was privileged.
The Examiner investigation raises questions about some established narratives in the early life, school, and work of President Obama. It calls the young Obama a child of privilege, not hardship.
You see, Barack and I were both raised by families who didn't have much in the way of money or material possessions, but who had given us something far more valuable: their unconditional love.
I'm sure he had a difficult childhood, given the circumstances with his parents and so forth, but from a financial standpoint, a social standpoint, and so forth, it was not an underprivileged childhood.
The Examiner reports that the Indonesian neighborhood Menteng, where his mother and stepfather raised young Barry Soetoro, was the most exclusive in Jakarta.
Was still the guy who picked me up for our dates in a car that was so rusted out I could actually see the pavement going by in a hole in the passenger side door.
But while he worked in the city's impoverished South Side, he lived in exclusive Hyde Park. Of his 12 years as a lecturer at the University of Chicago Law School, Time magazine said in 2008, quote, within a few years he had become a rock star professor with hordes of devoted students. But student evaluations obtained by the Examiner tell a different story. In 2003, only a third of students recommended his courses.
It steadily went down in the last 5 or 6 years that he was there. He was among the lowest ranked professors.
Nor did the future president leave any record of scholarly writings, while similarly credentialed colleagues wrote prolifically in law journals.
Nor did the future president leave any record of scholarly writings, while similarly credentialed colleagues wrote prolifically in law journals.
So the story of Barry Soetero's actual background is extremely interesting, because in actuality, Barack Hussein Obama never officially changed his name from Barry Soetoro. Most people think he did. That is not true. Here's an excerpt from Free Republic. There is no evidence Barry Soetoro ever lawfully changed his name to Barack Hussein Obama. There is no proof Barry Soetoro was born with the name Barack Hussein Obama. The public knows Barry Soetoro finished his high school in Hawaii as Barry Soetoro and attended Occidental as Barry Soetoro, where he did drugs and flunked out of school. After dropping out of Occidental, Barry showed up in New York homeless and on drugs, and that's by his own admission. Barry then hooked up with a Pakistani to live with and traveled back to Indonesia on that person's dime, and renewed his Indonesian passport and traveled to Pakistan. Okay, so pretty interesting. Then they have the side note: ask any law enforcement officer in a large city and they will tell you homeless young men on drugs in large cities usually end up as male prostitutes. Well, as a side note, we of course know that Barry has been accused of doing crack cocaine and sleeping with men by a very good source who came out public with that. It was ignored.
Senator Obama asked me if I was referring to coke, and I stated I was. After stating I was, Obama stated he could purchase cocaine for me and then made a telephone call. This too is significant, from a cell phone to a presently unknown individual, during which Senator Obama arranged the cocaine purchase. Senator Obama and I then departed the bar in my limousine and proceeded to an unknown location where Senator Obama exited the limousine with $250, which was provided to him by me. Returned a short while later with an 8-ball of cocaine, which he gave to me. I did ingest a couple of lines of cocaine, and shortly thereafter Senator Obama produced a glass cylinder pipe and packet of crack cocaine from his pocket. Obama then smoked the crack cocaine. I performed fellatio on Senator Obama in the limousine during the time Senator Obama was smoking crack cocaine, after which I had the driver take me to my hotel, the Comfort Suites, Gurnee, Illinois. The following day, November 7th, 1999, Senator Obama appeared at my hotel room, unannounced, uninvited, where we again ingested cocaine and I again performed fellatio on Senator Obama. Significantly, both the driver's telephone call to Senator Obama and his call to the drug dealer should appear on the driver's and Senator Obama's cell phone billing statements.
So I know you're saying, what does it matter that Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, is a big fat cokehead? What does it matter? Well, having been around a few people who developed serious cocaine habits, I know a few things about people who are on cocaine. One is, they will lie about pretty much anything. They're on a huge power trip where they think they'll never get caught for anything they do, and they lust for power, and they will lie and steal and do anything it takes to get power. It's just a fact about people on cocaine. I don't do drugs. I used to smoke some weed back in the day. Now I have a full-time job. I can't do that stuff. But cocaine is a hell of a drug, as they say, and it makes people do things they wouldn't usually do. The Larry Sinclair interviews are extremely interesting, not only because Obama is gay, which I don't really care about. The fact that he's closeted, that's fine, whatever. But the fact that he has this long-term drug addiction, and that he had this drug addiction for a very long time now, and that he went to Afghanistan, and he has interfaced with the Saudi government and all this. There's a long-term thing going on here, not only the gay aspect, that's some very good blackmail. So if you have a serious drug addiction and you happen to be getting blowjobs from a male prostitute, you have serious blackmail issues. So this man will do whatever it takes to keep anything covered up, and he'll go along with whatever you tell him to do. He is the ultimate puppet. He's got a drug addiction, and he's got a huge dark past, and he's lied about every single thing in his life. So he's going along with the status quo.
Senator Obama produced a glass cylinder pipe and packet of crack cocaine from his pocket. Obama then smoked the crack cocaine. I performed fellatio on Senator Obama in the limousine during the time Senator Obama was smoking crack cocaine, after which I had the driver take me to my hotel, the Comfort Suites, Gurnee, Illinois.
Okay. Barry Soetoro returned to New York from Pakistan and began using the fictitious name Obama for some reason. Again, that's by his own admission. One could only suspect that a person addicted to drugs returning from Pakistan to New York, the main route for the Afghan heroin into the U.S., maybe Barry had some other reason to start using the new name. It appears Barry fled New York to Chicago using his new identity to get a job. He likely ordered a fake diploma to bolster his new identity as Obama. Fake diplomas were very big in the 80s, and diploma mills are even being used by federal workers to get promotions. They were even being used. There is evidence his alleged attendance at Columbia was faked. Barry never attended Columbia, and Barry lied his way into Harvard. He has no transcripts to get in. Now this is where it gets really interesting. We already have a connection to Pakistan. Here we go, Saudi Arabia. In telling the Saudi royal family he was fighting in Afghanistan with the Muslim Jihad against the Russians, they were able to help him get into law school. The Saudis apparently loved Barry's story of jihad in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and paid for Barry to attend Harvard under the name Obama. The Saudi family has admitted to paying for Obama to attend Harvard and gave Harvard a gift of $20 million. So, okay, hold on a second. The Saudis actually helped Mr. Osama. Osama's supposed to come from Saudi Arabia as well. And he was in Afghanistan and Pakistan? Wow, that's a pretty interesting coincidence. That's pretty wild. The Saudis helped him. Okay. It is unlikely Barry was a jihadist and was most likely a drug mule, if anything, maybe even a CIA street hire to haul Afghan heroin back to New York. Barry did not start using the name Obama until he returned from Pakistan, long after he flunked out of school in California. His selective service record, maintained in Chicago, coincidentally, shows he registered at a Hawaiian post office as Obama in September 1980. Problem: Barry was getting high in California at Occidental in 1980, Barry's own admission, and was not using the fictitious name Obama at that time. They try to make us think that he was using this name, Barack Hussein Obama, way before he actually was. Barry began using the fictitious name Obama only after he returned from Pakistan. Okay, so we have this guy who is lying about pretty much everything, who's a drug addict. That's not as important as where he's been. This is a man who would later have a name change, an unlegal name change. It was never actually documented that he did this, and become president, to Barack Hussein Obama, which is, of course, very close to Osama, and he was funded by the Saudis, and he was in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So these are all the main players that would later come together in the war on terror and would be involved with the Osama bin Laden debacle. So there's a lot of coincidences going on here. And it's very interesting that this man who would later be confused with Osama, who was a Saudi, would in fact be funded by the Saudis and would have been to Afghanistan and Pakistan, and presented himself as a clean black man that talked like a white man. Illinois elected Barry to U.S. Senate. The Democrats had begun scrubbing Barry's background when Ryan dropped out. Phil, Barry's boyfriend from Occidental, was found working in California as a communication specialist for a dental hygienist school and given a diploma from Columbia and cover story. The rest of Barry's drug friends were all given jobs or money by the Democratic machine to keep quiet, except for the one guy who he got a blowjob from and smoked crack with, who he forgot to give money to. They'd ratted on him. The only person jumping up and down warning Barry was not who he claimed to be, was Alan Keyes, and he was discarded as an angry loser. So it's a very interesting story. This guy he was hardly a senator for very long. He suddenly becomes president. Kind of comes out of nowhere. His whole name change is fake. He's got these connections to the Saudis, and he's been in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So it's just very interesting. It's surprising to see how fast he came out of nowhere and became this huge figure. And I think he was groomed all along, and I think this name change wasn't coincidental. I think it's all very well managed, and I think there's a lot of subliminal reasons for that. And it's just lie after lie after lie, from the fake birth certificate to all this other stuff. And, you know, the guy has used cocaine. He's admitted it. People who use cocaine become diabolical liars in a large scale. So it's interesting. And I think if I didn't make this video, I know it's going to upset a lot of people, and they're going to say, you know, it's beyond the pale. But I actually think it's a pretty interesting topic, and if you've read 1984, you know that the bad guy, Goldstein, the main question is, you know, does he even exist? And I think Obama, I think he was created to be Goldstein, and they knew that Obama was going to be taken out. It's really easy for the CIA to find somebody like this, a 6 foot whatever man on dialysis who goes to American hospitals all the time. They can't hide for a decade. And the CIA would have this guy killed in a couple hours. So they knew when they were going to take him out. They knew he was going to be replaced, and they were grooming potentially Obama to take his place decades in advance.